I used to think that psychosis was a disorder, like it was pretty much synonymous with schizophrenia. I didn't really see the difference. I didn't see that psychosis could be anything other than mental illness. But the truth is, psychosis is a symptom of a lot of different things, a lot of things that aren't mental illness. It can be caused by traumatic brain injuries, it can be caused by epilepsy, it can be caused by stress, sleep deprivation, childbirth, and even substances. That's right, substances. And while you may think that the substances I'm referring to are of a recreational manner, the truth is that a lot of different substances, including medication, prescribed medication, can cause psychosis. In fact, you might be surprised by some of the different medications that can cause it. So let's talk a little bit about it today. Let's talk about substance-induced psychosis, and for an added twist, I'll share a bit of my own perspective. Get started, here is a disclaimer to say that I am not a mental health care professional and I am in no way qualified to give any advice, medical or otherwise. Who I am simply is a person with lived experience having serious mental illness who is here to share with you the wisdom and insight I've gleaned along my journey of recovering from mental illness. Also, a trigger warning. Psychosis in and of itself is a sensitive subject to talk about and at times may be triggering. If at any point during this video you may feel triggered by what I am talking about, you are more than welcome to leave. In this video specifically, we will be talking about addiction, so again, if that is not your cup of tea, you are more than welcome to leave. Now, I'm no stranger to substance-induced psychosis because as an addict with schizoaffective disorder, I have put myself into that situation far too many times, more than I would care. So I have been through it myself, which gives me the unique perspective of knowing firsthand what it is like. I also happen to be a nerd for psychology and have educated myself a great deal on the subject. I had heard of substance-induced psychosis, aka drug-induced psychosis, in the addiction recovery scene. And I had not even considered that my drug use had contributed to a couple of my psychotic episodes. The thing is that even before learning about psychosis and getting into this realm, the advocacy realm in which I talk at great length about all things psychosis, I had been introduced to the concept of drug-induced psychosis by many people, a lot of whom don't even have mental illness. And of the ones that do, very few have a psychotic disorder. It is fairly common in my community, in the recovery scene, to have endured at least one psychotic episode at the receiving end of whatever drug they may have been using, typically meth, cannabis, stuff like that. In fact, if you can think of it, it can probably induce psychosis. As far as recreational drugs go, we're talking alcohol, cannabis, cocaine, methamphetamines, amphetamines in general, GHB, PCP, club drugs like ecstasy, MDMA, Molly, hallucinogens like LSD and mushrooms. And it doesn't stop there because medications can also induce psychosis. Some medications that I've heard of causing psychosis would be heart medications like beta blockers and ACE inhibitors, antibiotics, antihistamines, medications used to treat Parkinson's, things like steroids, honestly, which is far more common than I would have expected. That is actually a medication that I keep hearing pop up over and over. I've known personally in my life friends from high school that have had steroid-induced psychosis. So yeah, honestly, it's amazing how many things can cause psychosis and you wouldn't expect it. Fortunately, I am in the know, so I very carefully navigate the medication world. Aside from having mental illness, I also have chronic illness. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and narcolepsy, which require daily management. So I have historically taken amphetamines to treat my narcolepsy, but this really concerned me because as a person with a psychotic disorder, I am prone to substance-induced psychosis more than most people. And when a new medication was developed and released that was not an amphetamine, I jumped on it like immediately because I didn't feel safe on amphetamines. And a lot of narcolepsy medications will even say in these side effects that they can cause psychosis. There are a lot of variables in what can induce a psychotic episode. Some things to consider would be potency, how strong and effective a substance may be, the quality of the substance, the amount. In the case of a first-time user who is using a really, really large, potent amount, they may suddenly go into a psychotic episode. It may trigger it just like that. But for a lot of people, this may come on gradually over a long course of use. The psychosis may happen while a person is using this substance, but in the case of long-term substance users who were to come off of their drug and go into a detox, that could be when the psychosis would set in. It's actually fairly common that the psychosis kicks in as the person is coming off of their substance. For substance users who are in a long sustained period of use, who are in psychosis during that use, they may develop chronic substance-induced psychosis, which can set them up for future schizophrenia. And that's the thing about substance-induced psychosis. It doesn't necessarily have an end point because as long as a person may be using their substance, they may stay in psychosis. Fortunately, for the most part, these psychotic episodes are typically shorter than the psychotic episodes a person may have with a psychotic disorder. And substance-induced psychosis usually lasts anywhere from days to weeks, or in the case of chronic substance-induced psychosis, it could last months or even years. Again, as long as a person may be using their substance, they may just indefinitely stay in psychosis. Fortunately, once a person comes off of the substance that is inducing the psychosis will resolve. This isn't true of everyone. Some people may need medication to completely come out of the psychosis, but in a lot of cases, most cases, it will go off on its own and you can come out of psychosis naturally in the absence of that substance. Now, while it may be difficult to avoid in the case of medication where psychosis could be a side effect, like I said, with antihistamines or antibiotics or steroids, now that's kind of tricky because that's prescribed. Recreational drug use is optional. So it'd be easy to stay away from that, right? Well, addiction is a tricky beast, and it's not as easy as just putting down the drug. I assure you, it's a lot harder than that. Addiction is not a choice. It's not something anybody wants. I don't know a single addict who signed up for this life or thought growing up that they would end up like this. So I see a lot of times in my community people who would have substance-induced psychosis from drug A and switch to drug B. This is a really, really common tactic that addicts take where they think the problem is one drug, so they think if they just switch to the other, all of their problems will go away. But in the case of substance-induced psychosis, it could just follow you. Like me, for instance. I've had marijuana-induced psychosis, and you wouldn't think that marijuana of all drugs would be that dangerous. But for a person with my brain chemistry, it absolutely is. So let me share with you a little bit about my personal experience with substance-induced psychosis. So I didn't realize that having a psychotic disorder meant that my recreational drug use could be so triggering. I didn't think that on psych meds I could go psychotic. But the thing is, I had my first drug-induced psychotic episode while medicated, and my medication was being very poorly managed by my doctor, who was over medicating me, which in and of itself may have caused the psychosis, but it certainly didn't help that I was smoking weed every day, and great quantities of it, mind you. Combination of the medication regimen I was on and my constant drug use, I put myself into a psychotic episode. I mean, my doctor and I put me into a psychotic episode. It was my first really big episode, and it was the first one in which I had anosognosia, which is where you lose awareness of your mental state. So I fully believed in my hallucinations and delusions and could not be convinced they weren't real, no matter what. It was really enormously bad. It was devastating. And I was told in the hospital not to smoke marijuana anymore, which you'd think would be a simple solution, right? Wrong, because I kept smoking weed in the future. After coming out of psychosis, I did manage to sober up and get into sober living, but I eventually relapsed. And when I relapsed, I went back into psychosis. Sobered up for another year, relapsed, went back into psychosis. I did that typical addict thing of trying to calculate a way that I could safely use my drug without throwing my life away. And so I had this whole system in my head. If I don't smoke every day, if I smoke every third day, if I don't smoke a lot, if I smoke just a couple of puffs off a joint at a time, maybe then I will be able to maintain this addiction without going psychotic. And I tell you, my friends, there is no safe amount of marijuana for me. There is no safe strain. There is no safe, way of taking it, whether it be edibles or dabs or flower. There's absolutely no way in hell that I can stay psychosis free once I smoke weed. And amazingly enough, I have done so many drugs. I have done everything that could be offered to me, and nothing else made me go psychotic. Nothing, just weed. What I've learned the hard way, time and time again, is the best way to stay free of substance-induced psychosis is abstinence. If you struggle at all with substance-induced psychosis, whether it be from medication or recreational drug use, getting off of that drug and staying off of that drug is the key to being psychosis-free. This is really hard for addicts in particular to grapple with, because addiction is so insidious, and it can be easy, like I said, to think that switching from one to another is the solution, or taking less of a drug is the solution. I tell you, 100% abstinence is the way to go, and it's so hard. It took me years, like 10 years, to get to the point that I could stop. But today I have over 5 years sober, and I've been psychosis free most of that time. Wouldn't you know that once I got off the drugs, the psychosis went away and never ever came back. So that's what I know about substance-induced psychosis, both through my personal education and firsthand experience. I hope this video was helpful to you in some way, or at the very least entertaining. Thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. If you'd like to support my channel, you can like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know in the comments your experience with substance-induced psychosis, if you've ever had it yourself, or if you've ever helped a loved one through it. Anything you have to contribute, I'd love to hear from you. You can also further support my channel by checking out my merch store and maybe buying a t-shirt. I have a link to it in the description box below. I also put out videos every Thursday/Friday. There will be more coming soon. I am coming back from a break tentatively. I'm hoping to put out more videos, but I may scurry back to my break. We will see. I've just been a little bit stressed with some personal lifey stuff going on, but it's getting there. It's being resolved. Anyway, that's all I have for you this week. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.